That was the most post-lunch applause of all time. I'm going to pretend you guys like Steven. Let's also keep the applause going as we welcome back the outspoken Rucka Rucka Ali. Our next panelist is a conservative YouTube entertainer with over 650,000 subs and over 100 million views on YouTube. Hunter Avallone is an outspoken commentator. Hey now. No. I knew it. He was going to be the one that messes up my intro. You're not supposed to come out yet. Outspoken commentator on social and political topics, infusing humor into his content and critiques. Please welcome to the stage Justin Bieber's more sophisticated twin brother, Hunter Avallone. And our final guest hails from far-off Scotland. Comedian, YouTuber, and political activist Mark Meechan is better known to the world as Count Dankula. Mark rocketed into the public consciousness in 2016 when he was arrested for teaching his dog to do a Nazi salute as part of an elaborate joke. The ordeal kicked off a global debate about free speech and convinced many of us that the UK is a horrendous place to live. Please welcome to the stage one of the UKIP party's rising stars and a truly talented public speaker, Mark Meechan. You'll do well. Oh, you guys are awake. Good.
Welcome back, everyone. I think it's the third panel I'm moderating now, and basically they paid for my flight, so they're just making sure they get their money's worth. But this is a great topic. We've been talking a lot about comedy, and I'm going to throw over to you, Mark, first with the opening question. Is there anything that we shouldn't be joking about?
No. I don't even know how to further elaborate on that, because I'm sick of people trying to control it. You can't joke about this, you can't joke about that, and it's a case of if you don't like the things that I'm joking about, then why are you at my show? Like, we've even had instances of reporters literally like buying tickets to sneak into the show to then write down all the offensive jokes, and it's like, what you said was offensive, then why the fuck were you there? That man, you know, these are the type of people that dive into the ocean and then are surprised when they get wet. Right, but it's a case of nothing should be off limits when it comes to comedy. The purpose of comedy is the intent to make people laugh, and laughter in comedy is a unifying thing. You're not trying to divide anyone, you're not trying to attack anyone, you're trying to make people laugh, which is a lovely, noble, happy thing to do. So whenever someone says, oh, you shouldn't joke about this, you shouldn't joke about that, just tell them to go fuck themselves.
Rucka, do you think we should draw lines on certain topics or taboos that should be off limits for making humorous content about? Does it make a difference if you intentionally seek to offend people versus whether you do it by accident as well?
I'll surprise you. Look, sometimes a joke isn't appropriate, like someone's kid gets hit by a car and you walk over and crack a joke about it. And of course, everyone... I guess it's a calculated risk anytime you joke about something taboo or very tragic. When I was 14 and 9/11 happened, there's a funny topic. Well, no, the day after the attack, I'll say. I'm not going to call it a tragedy. It was an attack. I saw somebody sent me over AOL Instant Messenger a picture of toilet paper with Osama bin Laden's face on it. And at the time, I was upset. I was like, how could this person be joking about this horrific attack? But I am nothing if not an analyst of the American soul. I have come to understand this culture, why people here joke the way they do. And I think it's primarily, it comes from a positive place that we, that we joke about 9/11 before the second plane hits. It's, there's something in us that can't quite be beaten down.
Hunter, do you have any lines that you think should be drawn in terms of what you can talk about? And how should you respond, if at all, to any outrage or offense at your content?
Well, I think that I think everyone has a different line. So I think the big problem is that a lot of these people that get really offended by jokes try to apply their own line universally, where everyone has a line. You know, some people might not want to joke about 9/11. Some people might find that completely acceptable. And to go off a little bit what Rucka said, I also do think that it is a little bit of a timing thing. Obviously, yeah, if your kid gets hit by a car, you probably don't want to crack a joke right after at the funeral or something. But, you know, as time goes by, there certain jokes about certain tragedies sometimes become a little bit more acceptable. And to people who get offended, I mean, yes, you can kind of just tell them to go fuck themselves, but you can also point them towards the direction of some softer, more shallow, boring kind of comedy if they don't like some offensive, risky jokes, because again, everyone has their own line. So there's no reason for them to try to apply their line to your comedy.
Okay, so talking about less risque jokes, Mark, I'll ask you. I mean, you guys are doing your main bulk of work online, and is that sort of a reaction to this idea that maybe the mainstream comedy circuit's lost its teeth a little bit? We used to rely on comedians to be the vanguard in that sense. They'd be the ones to poke apart the taboos or touch on topics that other people couldn't. But it just feels like there's not a lot of that happening right now. I don't know if you think, Mark, maybe mainstream comedy's letting the side down a little bit.
I feel that it has. I feel like most mainstream comedy now is more about virtue signalling and trying to prove that you're a good person, and it's just, see, whenever I see someone with a large public platform going, racism's bad, Nazis are bad, white supremacists are bad, my mind immediately goes to, this person's raped someone. At some point in their life, and they're trying to collect a lot of good boy points so that when their eventual Me Too happens, you know, they can try and use that to maybe sway the mob. Oh, but I'm a good person. Yeah, it doesn't matter, because we've seen it happen. See, whenever you see a left-wing comedian get Me Too'd, or, you know, someone digs up a picture of them in blackface from 15 years ago. Remember that scene in Game of Thrones with Ramsay Bolton? My hounds will never harm me. Yeah, that's what you fucking think, mate.
So, Rucka, so I mean, in that sense, when we're talking about people virtue signaling comedy, does comedy need to be socially conscious in this idea of punching up and punching down? Do your targets have to be valid, or is everyone fair game for comedy?
I mean, I'm not a fan of, like, targeting a private citizen that didn't want to be in the public light. I can see how they're, like, if I walk up to someone in the street and grab a video with him and then, like, post it to a channel with 1 million subs, I can understand the argument saying, like, this person never wanted to be punched at or anything. It's usually funnier to punch up, I guess. Look, I mean, comedy, there's a method to it. There's a method to the madness, or it just doesn't land. It's, anytime you craft anything creative, anytime either you write a story or a joke or whatever, you need to use certain concepts that are abstracted from the world around us. Even if you're writing science fiction taking place on a different planet in a different millennium, you're still using images and words that people can understand. So when you're taking topics to talk about in any context, writing a poem, whatever it is, in any art form, that it's going to include tragic things. It's going to include sort of punching down, you know, talking about a group that is, you know, theoretically on a lower level than you on the so-called hierarchy. So I guess my short answer is it depends. There you go.
Hunter, I don't know if you want to add to that?
I mean, again, I would have to agree that, yeah, you probably wouldn't want to go after a private citizen that had no interest in being, like, made fun of. What I don't like is that a lot of the times people are already in the public eye and then they try to claim harassment when they get made fun of online. A lot of the times we see this with, like, social justice warrior activists or whatever, who they have a public Twitter, they have a public platform, and they're constantly sharing their stupid opinion, and then when someone else responds, then they claim harassment, or if you make fun of them, they claim that it's hate speech or something like that. That's more what I have an issue with. So when we're talking about people that are already on a public platform, I really don't think that there's any, like, I think that everyone is fair game to make fun of.
Mark, what sort of, if any, is your conviction, or wrongful conviction, in my own opinion, for posting a joke video on YouTube? Has that had any sort of chilling effect on the kind of things you pay attention to? Have you thought of putting something out now and just thought, you know what, it's probably not worth the chance of the Scottish police knocking on my door?
There has been a few occasions where I've made a video, and while I'm editing it, I've made a joke, and then I go, No. just gonna edit that out. But that's why the problem is whenever I'm on stage like this and I kind of have a bit of no filter, and there's been many times where I've made jokes and as soon as I say it I go, oh shit. So, like there's going to be a knock at the door when I get home. But I have started to sort of self-censor a little bit, which I'm not proud to admit, because I just don't want to go through what I went through again. And it has like made me a little bit afraid, to be honest. You know, I'm kind of careful about what I tweet. I'm careful about what videos I make. And, you know, I'm not very proud to admit it, but I mean, it was 800 fucking pounds. I don't have 800 pounds again.
Rucka, has there been any content that you put out or you've started making and you've got some way into it and you've thought, you know what, it's just not worth the hassle?
Yeah, that actually has happened. And then I was like, okay, now I have to do it. And then I did it anyway. There's been a couple times when I something occurred to me and I said, you know what, that's like, it's not funny enough for me to put that much work into it just because it's shocking, you know? So there is a method. We make it look easy, you know? People, they look at me, they look at Dankula, they look at Hunter, they say, oh, anyone can do that. But let's see you do it. See, it's not as easy as it looks.
Okay, well, just for giggles and to make everyone's butt clench a little bit, the Prophet Muhammad. And if we all cast our minds back to Charlie Hebdo and the massacre they endured at their offices for satirizing Islam's prophet, and they didn't seem like a whole host of liberal support for them. And I suppose that falls into one of the categories of satire or comedy where you know it's going to insult, inflame, enrage. And I just wonder, have we lost our right, in a sense, to do that? Have we been censored into not criticising that particular aspect of Islam because we know the inevitable outcome will be death, violence, being on the run for the rest of your life?
Well, I thought, here's a panel, we can just stick to one topic, but you're giving me so much to work with. So this goes back to Salman Rushdie in the, I think, late 80s or early 90s when there was the Ayatollah in Iran said, kill him. His publishers were being threatened. Publishers in America were being threatened. And the U.S. president at the time, George Bush, should have said, you mess with our publishers, you're messing with our military, and we're going to take you out. But of course, what Bush Sr. did was basically denounce Salman Rushdie. The Western countries have done a piss-poor job defending free speech from foreign aggressors. They have not made it clear that they're going to protect our free speech from foreign aggressors. And when it comes to Charlie Hebdo, what I saw was tons and tons of comedians and all these people around LA and across the internet saying, Jesuit Charlie, we are Charlie. Really? Because Charlie posted that picture, but all you're posting is the words Jesuit Charlie. You post the fucking picture if you stand with Charlie. So, yeah.
Hunter, do you have a good Prophet Muhammad bit that you'd like to share?
I mean, I have made fun of Islam before. Again, it just goes back to I don't think that anything should be off limits to make fun of, especially if it's a religion. I mean, all religions are open for criticism, including Islam.
Mark, anything to add?
The one thing that annoyed me most about the Charlie Hebdo thing is essentially people were going, oh, well, they shouldn't have posted that. They shouldn't have made that. I mean, they knew what it was going to do. But see, if there is something that you could say or a type of content that you could make that's going to cause a person to react violently and kill you, then the problem's not with you or your content. The problem's with this fucking lunatic of a person. Right? It's a case of, if you want to run around and kill people, that's your fucking problem.
Okay, so I mean, this was briefly touched on at the start of the panel. I think this idea of time, of tragedy plus time equals comedy. So there's things that tragedies that we joke about today that we wouldn't have joked about 2 minutes later, after they'd occurred, should I say. And so I'm wondering, how does that work? What is the voodoo that occurs there where we can make jokes about Anne Frank now, for instance? Well, maybe not, it depends, tough crowd. But we couldn't make jokes about, I mean, I think famously Anthony Jeselnik got in trouble for making a Boston Marathon bombing joke, I think, the day it happened. So is that just really ballsy or is that really insensitive?
I think it can be a bit of both. As a case of like, I've sort of done jokes on the days that tragedies have happened, but it's a case of I'm at the point where I don't really care what people think of me. You're a prick. Yeah, well, there you go. But I don't do it now because of if enough time passes, maybe a few weeks, I will make jokes. But it's a case of I'm at the point now where if it's on the day, then I don't do it anymore. But I think it is. But it's a case of there isn't an equation or anything, is it sort of, number of deaths plus days minus, I don't know how it works out.
Yeah.
You just need to sort of read the room.
Hunter, is there sort of a cathartic aspect of making fun of tragedy? Not necessarily making fun of tragedy, should I say, but making jokes about it. Is it a coping mechanism just to get us through all the dark shit that happens day in, day out?
I mean, it probably is for some people. I'll be honest, it isn't really for me. But as far as your question goes for how long, the tragedy plus time, I think the timing, waiting a certain amount of time before making a joke usually helps with people hearing that joke not getting as angry as if you made the joke on the day. But again, I don't think there's any actual magic combination. I just think that's kind of for the comedian to decide and if they want to take that risk or not.
So, Rucka, there's a very popular pastime at the moment, and I think it's been dubbed outrage archaeology, whereby you will go and unearth some blue comment or some off-colour joke from years ago and then be used in the present day to either get an individual fired from a project or publicly shamed or both. And I was just wondering, is there any sort of, should people apologise for past indiscretions in that sense? And what's the statute of limitations on an off-colour tweet?
I mean, how many insincere apologies do we want? That's the real question. Look, the case can be made that, joking about a terrible event is insensitive. The case can also be made, and it often is, that joking about things and laughing about things is what helps people deal with it and live with it. Go back to the most basic, family-friendly entertainment and see them joking about, funerals. Aren't there comedies that take place at funerals? Funerals are a miserable time. Someone just died. But life and death are universal issues. Like I said before, if you're going to make art of any kind, you need to abstract from the world around us. You need to talk about things that people relate to. And I believe South Park answered the question of when when it becomes okay. 20 years or was it 25? I don't remember. As long as AIDS had been around by that time, is when it became okay to joke about. I know your question was more about archaeology. I'm just glad they don't need to do any digging with me. They can just look at what I said yesterday.
Mark, should you ever apologise for a joke?
No. I just find it extraordinarily counterproductive when people demand that you apologise for an offensive joke. You hurt my feelings, apologise, and it's a case of, if I cared about how you felt, I wouldn't have made an offensive joke. And people going back and digging up stuff. I've had them do it with me. There was one. I don't know if anybody's seen that article where, I don't know, is anybody here from my Discord? Fucking degenerates, right? But reporters came into my Discord and basically found me posting some spicy memes and tried to sort of use this against me, going, you posted this horrible thing, so the only thing I did was reply to them with the memes. I just kept sending them, and then there was one guy where I went, oh, I've got so much worse than that, have a look at these. And just, it's a case of, they want you to apologise because they just basically want to feel like they have lordship over you, and just tell them to fuck off. Honestly, there's no good that comes from apologising. They want you to admit you did something wrong when all you did was hurt people's feelings.
In your case specifically, and the joke that got you into trouble was the general Nazi theme, and then that was applied to you as a person. You were labelled a Nazi, and people still apply that label to you. So what's the issue here, where we have a certain group of society who can't differentiate between a joke about a thing and being the thing? Do you think they're being sincere, or is it a smear tactic?
It's this weird thing that sort of came out, and it all sort of started with that Contra video decrypting the alt-right, and it's basically started this theme that people are secret Nazis and secret white nationalists and all that.
Hands up, have we got any Nazis in? Just do a quick poll.
The one Korean guy says yes. Anyone else?
Hey.
9 Nazis.
Yeah, how do you do, fellow Nazis? No, but we've basically dubbed it McContraism instead of McCarthyism.
Right.
Because she literally says in the video, after all, I'm not a fascist, is exactly what a fascist would say. Excellent fucking point. So if everyone could tweet at Contra and call her a fascist. Right? But it's basically like people try and think that the big mix-up is people think that just because you joke about a bad thing, it means that you're happy that bad thing happened. Like, I make jokes about the Holocaust. I don't sit at home watching the old black and white footage with a whiskey in my hand going, classic, yeah. Like, it's not the same thing. Like, and if anything, see, by joking about something like that in an offensive manner, knowing you're being a bit cheeky, you are acknowledging that it is a bad and terrible thing. But mostly left-wing verified journals will ignore that point and think that you're happy that these things occurred.
Yeah, I mean, can I just say, like, for a Holocaust joke to be funny, you're acknowledging that the Holocaust is a negative thing, yes? Or, like,
Exactly, yeah.
That's the context. It's like, here's how bad this is, like, I'm making light of something that should not be made light of. Like I mentioned, the kid getting hit by the car and everyone laughs because it's not a funny issue, which is why it became funny. Right?
Okay, Hunter, have you ever had to retract any content that you made or apologize for it? Or have you ever come close to doing something like that?
I've never apologized, and I never will
Just
apologize.
in general.
Have I ever had to, what, apologize?
Ever.
Oh, yeah, just never, you know.
Never apologize.
No, as far as, like, jokes or comments I've made, I've never have apologized, and I never will. I have removed some old content just because I no longer stand entirely with what I said several years ago, or there was the way that I went about saying it that I didn't like. So especially some of that's motivated more by YouTube's new policy and the way that they are really cracking down on people that do make offensive jokes or make offensive content in general. But so yes, I have had to remove a couple old videos where where I shared some opinions in a way that I no longer would really agree with, but I've never apologized for a joke, and I never will.
Rucka, what are some of the taboos in comedy today? What are the issues and topics that'll get you in trouble faster than anything else? Where are the things that most people try and steer clear of for fear of outrage?
Anything today? Everything. Well, okay. It's weird. Like, I'm not even sure anymore. Like, what does it take to get in trouble today? Misgendering, right? Okay, yeah. I would say, like, joking about a man. You know, you see a woman. Oh, she's hot. Wait, that's a man. You know, that's such a classic. Every sitcom had one of those. You know, dude looks like a lady. It was a magnificent song. Good luck getting away with that today. Yeah, so definitely I would say trans people are the new super minority. Yeah, punching down, right? If you're straight and white, you can't make fun of black and lesbian, or there's multiple variations of how that intersectional web works. So just don't say anything. That's what I keep telling people. Just don't say anything. Or smirk. Don't smirk at anyone.
So, Mark, there's this sort of fear from people on the left who don't particularly appreciate or understand comedy, and they tend to think that comedy is often used as a mask just to say bad things. You excuse horrible behaviour and bad opinions by saying it was all a joke. Do you think there is an element of truth to some of those claims?
No.
Succinct, I like it. Hunter, would you say that people sometimes use the veneer of comedy to say hateful things?
I think sometimes, yeah. I mean, I don't do that, but I know that there's got to be someone out there who is cracking jokes because of an underlying hate towards some group somewhere. However, I think that it's wrong to categorize most people that make jokes as hateful people who have some kind of underlying hatred.
Sure. So, in terms of satire, and especially political satire and comedy surrounding politics, how much of a role does that play in political discourse? Do you think comedy is a valuable tool to sort of shape people's political leanings, or is it not really comedy's role to sort of influence serious topics in that way? And I'll throw this to you, Rucka.
What?
So, Do you think it is the responsibility of comedians, not necessarily the responsibility, but do you think comedy can play an active role in shaping political opinions and making change for the better, or is it solely a form of entertainment?
Well, I mean, look, nothing's in a vacuum. I think comedy has affected the world. I mean, Lenny Bruce, I think, if the movie about him with Dustin Hoffman is any indicator, he was facing prison time for swearing on stage. And he killed himself. I think today, anyone who values free speech should look back on that and say, you know, he was falsely prosecuted and falsely convicted because he had every right to speak on the stage where he had been invited to speak. So comedy has definitely helped, I think, reinforce our support and protection of free speech by pushing those boundaries. And furthermore, it is a type of propaganda. You can actually, push a certain belief. You can help spread a philosophy by entertaining people. That includes comedy. So, yeah, it can be. But that's not the same as, saying that a comedian believes every word he's saying. Obviously, that's quite a leap. Because the point of it being a joke is that it's either an exaggeration or it's completely untrue. She agrees.
100%. So Mark, when you got in trouble with your video and the law came a-knocking, the response from the comedy world was not particularly positive, and there was no support whatsoever.
Yeah, fuck Graham Linehan.
And he's a wonderful example of how they always eat their own as well, because they've come for him now for a lot of things that he's said.
Yeah, it's funny how that works, isn't it?
It's strange, yeah. So I was wondering, why do you think they were kind of mute, or not necessarily mute on your issue? They was actually, willing to dish out the condemnation of you personally. What was it? The subject matter? Why didn't they?
It was a good chance at a virtue signal. You know, everyone look, it's the big bad Nazi man, the guy that's in his underwear playing with his dog. Like, we're on our way to Poland right now, but it was like that was the thing. I was just an opportunity at a virtue signal, and a lot of these people go, "Oh, this is a good chance for me to announce to the world what a good and wonderful person that I am." But there was a few comedians who did come out and actually supported me. You know, Ricky Gervais came out, David Baddiel came out as well, but a lot of others kept quiet. Yeah, go on, clap for them, yeah. But there was a lot of other ones that kept quiet, and I think the reason Ricky Gervais could come out is because Ricky Gervais has fuck you money. He's like one of the biggest comedians, as well, especially Notch as well, because he sold Minecraft for $1 billion, and as soon as he did and had all that money, he just posted on Twitter, QAnon is real. Man, because these are people that have a lot of money and don't need to give a fuck anymore. But there was other comedians who stayed quiet. But what they did instead was they messaged me. It was sort of, I really, really support your case, and I think it's horrible what happened to you, but please don't tell anyone I spoke to you. I'll lose all my contracts, I'll lose my jobs and everything. And that's the thing is, a lot of them wanted to, but they didn't out of fear because they knew they would be completely shunned and ostracized by the community. I had a point to make, but I've forgotten it. Never mind. I'm hungover, right? Sorry. Thanks, man.
Shout freedom just this one time.
You motherfucker. Freedom.
Look, I don't know if I'm making an assumption here, but I'd imagine with the kind of risque comedy you make, you may often hear from people who say, look, I love your stuff, I think it's hilarious, but there's no way on earth I can share that or tell my friends or tell my family. And I just wonder, how is this chilling effect being created where we can't express ourselves without fear of family members and society in general judging us for our tastes?
Oh, you're asking me? It sounded like you said Hunter. Yeah, we got what is this, the UN? I can't understand what anyone up here is saying. Jesus Christ. Can you translate some shit?
I was actually hoping we could get some subtitles for this guy.
I'm sorry, I thought you were asking him something, so I was just going to take 30 seconds to just think about some other shit. Sorry, can you
want me to repeat the question?
Please repeat the question.
So, because you make risque comedy, I would imagine a lot of people communicate to you and say, look, I love your stuff, I think it's great, but I couldn't possibly share it or tell my friends or family I like it. And so what's created this climate where people can't express their tastes?
Civilization? I mean, what you joke about on the internet is not necessarily what you're going to say at a dinner party with grandma. And maybe you shouldn't even invite grandma to your dinner party, because that's like a whole different type of get-together. Look, I mean, there are places, like, there is a time and a place, you know? I wouldn't even get up on this stage and probably tell some of the jokes I've said in lyrical form, as much as I know this audience likes to have a good time, but, you know, we're here at this nice casino, they were nice enough to have us. It's like I don't need to push buttons everywhere I go. I'm surprisingly conservative when it comes to, I think, being polite in polite company, so I don't necessarily promote blasting my videos and songs, out in the middle of the street and stuff like that. So I don't know if so much that society has turned out a certain way. It's more that just there's a place for comedy, there's a place for raunchy content, and then there's a place for polite human beings to act civilized.
Okay, so, I mean, everyone's talking about Dave Chappelle's new Netflix special. I mean, has everyone seen that? It's fantastic, and people are treating it as a breath of fresh air because he's going for the things that have been off limits for a little while. And it seems to me that the stuff that he's talking about there was commonplace to talk about 10 years ago. So I was just wondering, have we got to a place now, and Hunter, I can throw this open to you, where the climate in terms of comedy and speech has actually become more conservative, and it's got to that point under the guise of liberalism. Do you feel that there is less freedom of expression in comedy now than there used to be?
I mean, it's definitely possible. I think that a lot of people are more sensitive also. And the way that specifically the left has kind of created this sort of dichotomy is you can't make jokes about trans people or gay people, but you can make all the jokes you want about white people or men. And what I always say to that is, if you want equality for trans people and for gay people, then equality means making jokes about them and making fun of them, just like you'd make fun of anyone else. So... Right, so that's equality in my mind. So I think that a lot of people are way too sensitive now, and I do think that can kind of step on people's freedom of expression, their freedom to make the jokes that they want to make, and then it also doesn't help when you can get in trouble on like the social media platforms as well for making a joke that might be offensive. So I think that really it's just people are really sensitive, and then we've kind of been put in this scenario where we're no longer allowed to make jokes about certain groups of people for some reason.
Okay, so Mark, you and I live in the UK, where making a joke can get you arrested or a knock on the door from the police, and the police really seem to be leaning into this idea of hate speech at the moment. And I mean, when you come to a place like the United States and they have a First Amendment, I'm very envious of that. And would you be on board with some sort of similar legislation in the UK to protect speech in the same terms?
Oh yeah, as soon as I got off the plane here, I was just walking through the airport shouting the N-word. Love this country, I was yelling racial epithets while firing guns. Like, truly is the land of the free. But that is something that I want in Britain. I want us to have a codified British constitution. I want us to have protected freedom of speech. I want us to be protected more from the government. And I want our guns back, right? Never... Because when the guns go, the rights follow. And we got our guns taken away from us in the 90s. And ever since then, we've slowly but surely had our rights getting taken away. You probably disagree with that, yeah?
Fuck me, you turn into Charlton Heston very quickly.
Yeah. I do, because I do. I want us to have protection from our government, which can throw you in jail for 6 months because you had a fucking potato peeler with you in public. That's a real thing. That happened.
Rucka, is there some truth to this idea that if you're going to make jokes about disability or you're going to use the N-word liberally, do you have to be a black person to do that? Do you have to be disabled to sort of make self-deprecating jokes about disabilities?
Yeah, why do you think I'm black and disabled? But Yeah, look, I mean, yeah, sort of. Yeah, I've always, I grew up with, the show Tough Crowd with Colin Quinn. I don't know if you guys across the pond used to watch that. You probably weren't born yet, but you had 5 days a week. You had Colin Quinn, who was a SNL veteran. He would sit there with 4 comedians, and you had Patrice O'Neill, rest his soul. You had, everyone. Chris Rock, George Carlin would show up occasionally. You had Nick DiPaolo. They'd be yelling at each other. You black people got to stop doing this. Yeah, well, maybe if you white people would apologize, all this. And that to me was just so fun. These are, we can say whatever we want because we're adults. We're adults. We can say it. It's not the same as breaking into somebody's house and yelling it at them when they're asleep. You come to a comedy club or you turn on HBO After Hours or whatever the hell that thing was that emerged from 2011 with Ricky Gervais, Chris Rock, Seinfeld, and Louis C.K. I loved watching that clip when it emerged. I'm like, these are pros being trusted with heavy machinery. You got to pay your dues, okay? Don't do what I did. Don't just jump in right to the deep end. You got to pay your dues. You got to learn how to do it the right way.
So, Hunter, in terms of jokes, is it all about the construction and craft and context of the joke, or does the defining difference come down to who's telling the joke in terms of, a black person telling a particular joke? You could say, only a black person could tell that joke and get away with it, only a disabled person could say that about disability. How do you feel about that kind of joke?
Well, I think that, technically speaking, everyone can make any joke they want to, but if a black person is going to make a joke that includes the N-word, they're probably going to be far less scrutinized for it if a white person did. So yes, everyone can make whatever joke they want. For me, I used to do a lot more of the shock humor. I've kind of strayed from that now, and now I like to make jokes that are a little bit more implied. I like to make more implied, edgy jokes rather than just flat out edgy jokes. Just as I've matured a little bit, that's kind of the comedy that I find most appealing as well. So I don't think that you need to be in a certain position to make certain jokes like the left would have you believe. I think that a lot of the time we're fed these ideas that if you can only make this comment if you're this color, you can only say this if you come from this background. I think that, again, another great thing about America is that everyone can talk and insert their own opinion and their own jokes in every issue, whether they're from that background or not. I just think that society might scrutinize certain people more for making certain jokes.
Can I say something? I think there's this conventional wisdom in comedy that I'm Asian, so I can tell this joke, or I'm gay, so I can tell this joke. And if I'm remembered by history, I don't want to be presumptuous, but if historians do note me, I think they will observe that I was one of the first to say, no. Making fun of your own culture is not nearly as funny as pointing at other cultures and laughing at them.
That is very true.
So, Mark, because your predominant outlet is online media, so you're at the behest of Google, really, in terms of how they own and operate YouTube. And I was just wondering, how prominent is Google's political bias in that realm? And it's different things to many people. I've heard people describe it as right-wing, but I've heard people describe it as left. Yeah, I made that face too. So, how left-wing is Google, and how does that manifest?
Essentially, they're Maoists, I would say, at this point. Yeah, they seem to have did anybody see that interview with Susan Wojcicki who said, we should let anyone upload whatever they want to YouTube? Does anyone see that? So Alex Jones decided, cool, I'll relaunch InfoWars then. It lasted 7 hours. So quite clearly, Susan was fucking lying, right? But in fact, it is a concern because you are getting a lot of people that are getting kicked off the platforms. And have you not noticed that they're always right-wing? It's always right-wing. It's never, you don't see many left-wing or Antifa channels getting shut down on YouTube. It's always right-wing political commentators. So it's very clear that there is a bias at Google. And I know that my number's going to come up one day. Someone will dig up some video or comment that I've made, and then my channel's going to get wiped out, which is why I've bought a website, but I don't know how to make websites. So shout out, my email's contact@dankula@gmail.com if you're a web designer.
Rucka, does YouTube have a political bias, or does that manifest itself?
It seems like they do, right? I mean, when you look at stuff that happens with demonetization and all that, but it's always more. I think it's more complicated than it looks. You know, we like to think of YouTube as a monolith. These companies have like dozens of thousands of employees that most of them don't know each other. They don't see each other's work. Like, what's going on? It's a gigantic company. Early on, I was one of the veterans. I was one of the first on YouTube. And the first time one of my videos got deleted, I realized we don't really know what's happening back there. We don't really know. It's easy to guess, but we don't really know. But it does seem as the culture changes, we do see YouTube sort of disproportionately punishing certain types of content more than others as the culture sort of dictates. So, yeah, seems they do.
Hunter, where do you think YouTube falls on the political scale?
Well, I think that YouTube as a company is certainly left-wing. No one really disputes that. However, I don't think that they have nearly as much bias towards right-wingers as a lot of people think they do. It's kind of become really common especially in more right-leaning circles, to just play the victim when it comes to YouTube and claim that they have a bias or that they're out to get you no matter what. But that's really not the case, because I like to think of YouTube as, well, what they really are. They're a corporation that wants money. That's really what they care about. So they want to monetize as much content as possible. If you have a video that says the N-word in it or whatever, they don't really care. If YouTube had their way, they would monetize that because they want they want money from the ads. I think it's much more actually the mainstream media that holds YouTube to this standard and constantly goes after YouTube, that kind of results in this disproportionate thing we're seeing. And as far as what you said, Count Dankula, I actually have to disagree with you a little bit. When you say that more right-wing channels are deleted, I think what that really comes down to is that left-wing people tend to be a little bit more sensitive. They don't cross the line nearly as much, whereas right-wing people do. Right-wing people tend to step out and stick their neck out, say some more offensive, edgy shit, and that sometimes results in them getting.
How many left-wing channels have actually had the kings of Silicon Valley meet in a room and all plan and agree together to all at the same time delete? Alex Jones, Tommy Robinson.
Alex Jones should not even be considered right-wing. He's just a conspiracy theorist.
Yeah, he's considered right-wing though. That's the perception they have of him. They perceive him to be right-wing.
Okay.
And that was that perception alone, and also.
Well, again, Alex Jones was not just deleted for being right wing. Alex Jones was actually given several warnings.
What about Tommy?
What's that?
Tommy Robinson. What about
Tommy
him?
Robinson? Now, I don't like how they're handling the Tommy Robinson situation, but they're not removing his channel. They've put him in a restricted state. You can also see.
You can't even find it unless you have a direct link to it. They pretty much have removed it.
Yes, I don't like that. But again, this is.
Yeah, but how many left-wing channels has YouTube done that?
This isn't about left-wing or right-wing.
That was the question.
No, what I'm telling you is this is not about left-wing or right-wing. This is about right-wing people tend to cross the line and break YouTube terms of service more than left-wing people do. YouTube has a line, guys. I wish they didn't. I don't like it, but they do. They have a terms of service, and if you cross that line, if you break their terms of service, then it is within their rights to remove that content. And they're really not. I mean, guys, I make right-wing content. I make some pretty edgy content, and a lot of my videos are monetized because I follow their rules.
Must be nice.
So. Again, I've also seen plenty of. I also have seen left-wing channels that are fully demonetized completely. Actually, just recently, there's a lawsuit by Queer Kid Stuff, this absolutely disgusting channel, and they're actually suing YouTube collectively with a bunch of other LGBT people because they're claiming they're discriminated against because their videos are getting demonetized or their videos are getting restricted or their videos are getting age restricted or taken down or whatever. So this is an issue that's affecting a lot of people on YouTube in a lot of different areas, and to try to take this black and white approach that, it's just the right-wingers who are the poor victims. To me, I think that's just playing victim, and I think that YouTube has terms of service, and if you follow that terms of service, you're going to be okay on YouTube.
Okay.
Can I say something? I don't
No.
think YouTube doesn't create the rules of our culture, you know? They basically often enforce them, and often in an unfair way and with a bit of a spin, but we do live in a world where it's considered very impolite to bring up the topic of Muslims grooming and raping minors in England. YouTube did not make that stigma, but the stigma is there. So if you try to shed light on something that is happening to that effect, society at large is going to condemn you, and YouTube is but one of many people doing that. Is that kind of a little bit?
A little bit, yeah. And I just want to address someone in the audience said freedom of speech, but YouTube has absolutely nothing to do with freedom of speech. Freedom of speech in the Constitution has everything to do with the government not restricting your freedom of speech. YouTube, as a privately owned company, is not held to that same standard. So to try to even paint this as a freedom of speech issue is entirely dishonest.
And we are at Q&A. You know I was going to cut you off, Rucka. Our first question is from an incredibly special person. I'll let her introduce herself, but I feel like you're going to want to give a round of applause afterwards.
Hi, everybody. I have a question for you. I first want to premise this with I am a practicing Jewish woman, and I emphatically stand for freedom of speech because we are not free from offense. Oh, we could be offended. We could be very, very offended, but we are not protected from being offended. My question also involves, I have a horse in this race. I am the owner of the Human Village Brewing Company.
All right, now we're good.
Oh, Jesus. I mean, they've got a few good imports, but calm down.
Thanks. I believe the corporations are not people. We do not have opinions. We do not take stances. We are places of public accommodation. My question regards The Man Show. Actually, let's go for that, because I used to watch that growing up. And it regards redemption. And why certain people, like Jimmy Kimmel, will get redemption. The Man Show would not be made today. Let's just face this. Juggies would not be on trampolines. They would not be jugging beer for men. And I know that as a woman, because I would be so offended if you tell me a woman cannot chug a beer. I will go head to head with you. Why do some comedians get redemption while others like Kevin Hart don't? I know there's a comment that was made over a decade ago, and he was asked not to host an event recently. And what do you think it is? What are the factors that allow some people to be redeemed on their views and on their practices, while others will have to wear that as an albatross?
Well, I may be the only person here who was both of viewing age as well as living in America when The Man Show was on. I don't know if Kimmel has ever been pounced on yet. I see it more as he's got it coming at some point, and he's tossing and turning at night. Yeah, The Man Show. I mean, like I said, Tough Crowd with Colin Quinn, Crank Yankers. These shows were hysterical and so edgy and so like into stereotypes and all these things. You had Chief Runs with Pretense was the Native American. You had the black nationalist. All these amazing things were happening. Yeah, the list goes on. Special Ed, of course. If I think I would be a very good sort of SJW. If I chose to use my powers for evil, I would go after Kimmel. I would go after Adam Carolla. Listen to old Loveline. Jesus, the things they got away with. They got away with murder. So, yeah, but Kevin Hart, maybe he'll get to host the Oscars next year. I don't know. It's let's hope.
Next question. Oh.
First off, thank y'all for coming. I have a two-part quick question. Memes are a powerful form of comedy. Do you think that they're an accurate reflection on our culture, and do you think they can change our culture? Thank you.
I've been appointed spokesperson of memes. I feel that the term meme sort of is a way of kind of imparting and passing on information. It might be the intent to just simply educate people, but the primary intent of memes, I've noticed, is just to make people laugh. Like, and I do think that they can somehow shape culture or a person's perception of something by, you know, belittling it, making fun of it, or even just bringing more attention to it. But then you sometimes get people that are trying to make the argument that, you know, sharing a Pepe meme is a gateway to white supremacy, but these people are in the same vein as Republicans from like the 80s and 90s that, you know, Dungeons and Dragons causes devil worship, Grand Theft Auto causes you to murder hookers, playing The Sims causes you to put your baby in the oven. Like... dumb stuff like that, but it's a case of, I feel that ultimately it's just for comedy. I don't know if memes can actually shape the way a person thinks, because when I personally look at them, I just want to laugh. But again, my experience was different from others. Aye.
Point of moderator privilege. Can I piggyback on that question? What the hell are deep...
Stop clapping. Stop clapping.
We're running out of time, Dimitri. Next question.
Please explain deep fried memes, and am I too old to get them? What is happening?
That's far too meta. We don't have enough time. Sorry, man.
That's what I thought. You heard it here. They don't exist.
Now, I'd like to preface this by saying that I kind of broadly support the current president. That said, we haven't brought him up all day. What's the effect on comedy of having essentially a big orange clown in the White House?
I think it's made comedy really boring because I think Donald Trump jokes are too easy for a start and everyone pats themselves on the back for doing them, and I'd rather they do something that makes me think.
Well, how about letting an American answer? USA! All right. I think, you know, when I think about how we got from the days of Tough Crowd and The Man Show and all these comedians getting up there and pushing boundaries, how we got to today's state of comedy where, like, yeah, all these comedians are virtue signaling and just being so predictable and uninteresting, with some notable exceptions, of course. I think the election of Obama was like a major turning point, because up until that point, comedians loved to push boundaries. Suddenly we have a black president whose middle name is Hussein. What a gold mine, and nobody wanted to go there, man. At most, you had a few black comedians impersonating the way he talks. But come on, guys. He's rumored to be Muslim. Have a field day with this guy. So that's where I think the culture started to turn. And now we're at a point where there's a president in office again who it's virtuous to make fun of. And of course, you got the usual suspects making fun of him, but it's not that cool. It's not that edgy, because we all saw how you treated Obama. It's just, it's not that funny anymore.
Cool. So I love edgy humor. I love offensive commentary, comedy, and I think a lot of people here do. But I struggle with, I have a fiance who I love to death, and she does not. She does not deal with the offensive. We watched Dave Chappelle's skit, and it took her about 20 minutes for me to walk her back and be like, it's gonna get better. You'll enjoy it, I promise. How would you, as comedians, go to somebody who can't stand offensive humor, who can't sit in this room and laugh about the jokes we've been laughing about? How do you go to them and say, hey, like, you may not like my humor, but like, here it is? Or how do you let them at least get to a point where they're like, that's yours, have it, but it's not for me? How do you get people to laugh at offensive stuff that don't usually like it?
It's completely up to them as a person. Like, what is and isn't comedy, or whatever someone finds funny, is just completely down to the individual themselves. So basically, you can't control it. You can ask them to experiment, ask them to try out new things. Maybe they'll like it, maybe they won't. But it's a case of, ultimately, at the end of the day, you can't really control what they find funny. They do. And if it's a case of, if she doesn't like it, then she sounds boring, you should dump her. But
Hey, can I say something? People act like they want a girlfriend who plays video games, has tattoos, all these things. Do you want a girlfriend or a boyfriend? Your girlfriend doesn't like the same comedy as you? Just, take her out to dinner and watch Chappelle's show when she's out with her girls. There's my advice. And
He's
sign a
available
prenup.
on YouTube, folks.
So, what makes jokes and, by extension, the comedian valid? At what point does someone's jokes have the clear sign of being racist or hatred? Just as an aside, Rucka, I think maybe not 10 years ago, but quite that long back, when you started to get that rise on YouTube, there were a couple of people who tried to copy you, and they weren't good at it. And it was very clear that many of them were making the jokes not from the racist being the point of the joke, but from the actual person being the point of the joke. So what, other than that, would be makes someone different as a comedian rather than just someone using the jokes as a way to get their hate across?
The good one is when I do it. Yeah, no, I remember there was a channel called School Bus Yellow. They tried doing the Asian stereotype thing, but I think they were actually Asian. So again, it's not as funny to make fun of your own kind. You gotta look outward, get to know your neighbors and whatever, your relative. No, not relatives. Anyway, look, I mean, if you are racist, it's gonna come through. It's gonna shine through. If you're racist, you're also closed-minded and afraid of the world. So you're probably not that funny to begin with. You just got to really, really be excited and passionate about what you're doing. And if you are, you'll try to do it well, and then people will get it. They'll be like, all right, this guy's an artist. He's the voice of our generation.
Humble brag.
Got a couple quick fire things here. Rucka, I found you for your parody of Sargon. When are you doing one on Dankula? Out of the Bill of Rights, what would you amend if the UK actually adopted it? And other than that, offense is taken, never given.
Was your question what part of the Constitution, if I could have one thing, what one would I take?
All of it.
What would you change out of the Bill of Rights?
Oh, we were just going to copy paste. I mean, you already did it for us, like.
USA!
He's also Scottish. He doesn't know our Bill of Rights.
All right. So, 4 years ago, I had a pretty good group of friends, right? We all had this very unique sense of humor. One day, I made a joke. They all loved it beside one. And for some reason, she decided to turn on me and make that report to the police. Well, almost.
You have to tell this joke now.
Oh, God. No.
Wait.
But you definitely have to ask your question, that's for sure.
Yeah, Sean's panicking. Forget
I like
said that.
staying employed, please. Okay. And what? Okay. So, if my friends hadn't backed me up and I didn't have the group log or group chat log, I'd be screwed. What the hell do you do whenever someone just turns on you like that?
Can we have a little more info on the situation? So, like, how is she going to report this joke to the police?
There was some sexual content.
So she was going to report the joke alleging, like, sexual harassment.
Yeah, but we all made jokes like that. And for some reason, she just changed. Out of the blue.
I mean, if you're going to make a lot of really racy jokes, I guess just be really careful when you're making those jokes. I mean, it's good that you had the chat logs backed up, but anyone who's going to turn on you like that for making a joke, you don't want them as your friend anyway. So if anything, fuck her, be happy that she's gone.
Yeah, she sounds like a bitch.
She sounds like a feminist.
All right, so my question has a lot of political relevance to this convention. And it's one that I've debated with my friends, and I don't know, I can't really decide what's the right answer. So if a zombie bites a vampire, does the zombie become a vampire, or does the vampire become a zombie?
That is an amazing question. Thank you
I
for
don't
your
know the
service,
answer.
sir.
All right, I'm gonna eat the mic because Karen told me so. I don't know where she is. Hi, Karen. Hi, so I don't know you. Rucka Rucka, you're cool. Dank, you my nigga. All right, we good.
Wait a minute, I thought I was.
You might be by the end of the night. Okay, so I am a person that believes that there's no wrong time to make a joke at any point. I don't care when the tragedies happen, there's no wrong time to make a joke. Laughter is what heals us. And what I would like to know from each of your opinions is, why do you think that society is so just not willing to accept humor as a way to heal?
I think too often humor is seen purely as mockery, when sometimes it is kind of like what we talked about earlier. It is used as a form of coping, or yes, a form of healing. I think too quickly it's just written off as mockery. I also think that with the internet, there's a much higher, assuming you made this joke on the internet, of course, there's a much higher chance that you'll bump into someone somewhere that takes offense to that joke, whereas if you maybe were making a joke about a tragedy that took place the same day to a close group of friends, that might not happen.
But can we accept that offense is taken and not given?
Yes, yeah, sure.
I think that's what people need to understand, is that offense is taken and not given.
I agree.
Context is everything.
Let's give a huge round of applause to the folks on stage. We are, again, slightly over time, so you now have only 3 minutes to catch as many Pokemon as you would like. And then be back here for Who's Wrong About What with some pretty special people.
I was really thinking